remove the wheel, I'm going to use a 21mm socket to take the lug nuts off. And pull the wheel off. Now I'm going to use a 14mm wrench and take these two bolts off. If the studs start spinning, you can use a 17mm wrench just to hold that from spinning, and loosen these up. And same on the top one. Now I'm going to grab the caliper and just slide it out. Use a caliper hanger and just put it on the coil spring. Just make sure there's no tension on the brake hose. Now I'm going to take these pad springs off. Just use some needle nose pliers. Just slide these out. Now I'm going to use a pry bar or a straight blade screwdriver. Just pry these pads out a little bit. Do the same on this one. Well, this one's on there pretty good. There we go. Now I'm going to use a 14mm socket and take these two caliper bracket bolts out. Grab the bolts and slide the bracket right off. Now we're going to take the rotor off. I'm going to use a Phillips head screwdriver and take these two screws out. And if they're on there pretty good, then you can use an impact driver. And just take a hammer if this is stuck on, if it doesn't come right off. Just hit in these locations. Just be careful of the studs. Don't hit the studs. And slide it right off. Now we'll just take a wire brush, just clean any of the rust up on the hub surface. You could also use the die grinder. Now we're just going to take a thin coat of anti-seize and just put it on the hub surface. This is just going to prevent rust. I'm going to take the rotor, install it backwards first. Take some brake parts cleaner. I'm just going to wash the rotor down. Wipe it down with a rag. And flip the rotor around. Underneath here, there's an adjuster for the parking brake. If you have to adjust it, whether you have to tighten it or loosen it, you can adjust it right there accordingly. And then take this rotor, slide this in position, make sure those holes line up with the threaded holes. That's good. And take the screws, get the screws started, and snug those up. You want to take this plug off the old rotor. You can use a pick or a screwdriver. Just get underneath there and pry it up. And we're going to install that in the new one. That's good. This is also a way you can access that parking brake adjuster. You can pull that plug off and then adjust it right there. Now we're going to clean up the brake caliper bracket. Just use a straight blade screwdriver. Just get under this pad slide right here, or anti-rattle clip. Slide that up. And use a wire brush and just clean this up. Clean up most of the rust. And just take some brake caliper grease and just put it in those locations. Take the new anti-rattle clips and take a little more brake caliper grease. And then we can do the same on the other side. Now we're going to take these caliper slide pins out. I just slide those out. Take a rag, some brake parts cleaner, and just wipe them down. And if they were extremely rusty and dirty, you're going to want to take some brake parts cleaner and clean out the bore as well. These weren't too bad. And just grease these up. Some brake caliper grease. Slide these back in. Just make sure it seals on the boot. Do the same on this side. Now slide the caliper bracket over the rotor. And put the bolts back in. Get those started. Now we're going to torque these to 43 foot-pounds. Now we're going to install the brake pads. The brake pad with the warning indicator is going to go down on the inside. And then the one that doesn't have the indicator is going to go on the outside. Now we can install these springs. Now we're just going to take the brake caliper off the hanger. We're going to compress this brake caliper piston. You're going to need a brake caliper tool. Just get this lined up. And just slowly compress the piston. As you're compressing this, slowly, fluid's going through the hose, through the lines, back up to the master cylinder, into the reservoir. Just go nice and slow. And it's all the way down. Take the tool out. Now take the caliper, make sure the hose is not twisted, and just slide it over the pads. Now take the caliper bolts, install those. And we're going to torque those to 23 foot-pounds. Now we'll install the tire. And put the lug nuts on. Now we're going to torque the wheel to 80 foot-pounds in a star pattern or a cross pattern to tighten the wheel down evenly. And just go around again to double check. And then we're going to pump the brake pedal. There is going to be an air gap between the brake caliper piston and the brake pads. So pump up the brake pedal a couple times, and that's good. And now we're going to check the brake fluid level at the master cylinder reservoir. And there's a max line right on the side right here. Just make sure the fluid's up to that line, and that looks good. There's a min line down here, so adjust accordingly.